Leader of Majority.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion, that notwithstanding the resolution of the Senate made on the 16th February 2021, approval of the Senate calendar, 24th March 2021 and 30th March 2021, alteration of the Senate calendar, pursuant to Standing Orders 29.4 and 31.3c, the Senate resolves to further alter its calendar, regular sessions, for the 5th session 2021, in respect of Part 3, to hold sittings on Wednesday, 2nd, and Thursday, 3rd June 2021, between 2:30 and 6:30 p.m., and that the Senate proceeds on recess from Friday, 4th June 2021, and resume its regular sittings on Tuesday, 6th July 2021, as set out in Part 4 of the Senate calendar, and as per Standing Order 31, approved on 16th February 2021, and that the Senate calendar regular sessions for the 5th session be altered accordingly. I thank you.
Yeah. Which is the other one? Oh, Senator, yeah. Yeah. Senator Kajwang.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion, that the Senate adopts the report of the Standing Committee on Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations on the impasse on the budgetary estimates for financial year 2020-2021 for Kirinyaga County between the County Executive and the County Assembly, laid on the table of the Senate on Tuesday, 25th of May 2021. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Next order.
Order number 7, statements.
Let me rearrange the order paper. Let me get... which one? 51? Let me start with under standing order number 51, Senator Sakaja.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to make a statement as the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare, pursuant to Standing Order 51-1A. This is a tribute to a celebrated fallen rugby legend, the late Benjamin Ayimba. Mr. Speaker, I begin by conveying my heartfelt condolences and those of the people of Nairobi to the family, friends, and the entire rugby fraternity for their untimely loss. It is needless to say that the late Benjamin Ayimba, or popularly known as Benja, has not only contributed to the increased popularity of the sport in the last decade, but has demonstrated his love for both the sport and his love for his country. Mr. Speaker, sir, I make this statement cognizant of the fact that the mandate of the Committee of Labor on Labor and Social Welfare, which oversees 3 ministries, including the Ministry of Sports, Culture and Arts, The Speaker endeavors to support and oversight the programs undertaken by this ministry. For the last 4 years, the committee's focus has been to ensure that our sportsmen and women grow and perfect their God-given talents and subsequently earn a livelihood through such efforts. It is therefore against this background that I make this statement in recognition of the contributions of the late Benjamin Ayimba for close to 2 decades. Benja, as he was informally known amongst his friends and within the rugby circles, was an icon extraordinaire whose transition on the 21st of May, having lost the battle to cerebral malaria, has left many who knew and admired his sporting talent at a loss. This is a gap to both the family and the rugby fraternity in this country and in this region that will struggle to fill for the longest time. The late Ayimba was indeed a prolific, talented rugby player on the pitch and an astute coach, a husband and father. From the onset, I wish to recognize the late Ayimba's traits that have contributed not only to his illustrious career as a rugby player and coach, but also contributed to placing Kenya at the highest pedestal globally in the sport. His journey was characterized by persistence, willpower, and resilience to succeed against all odds. Those who knew him in his early childhood and teenage days describe him as having had extraordinary traits. Born and raised in a humble family setting, his rise to stardom began way back in the early 80s at the Olympic Primary School in Kibera, Nairobi. Following his stint at Maseno School, his then deputy principal noted that, as I quote, he was an all-round sportsman. As he participated and won in track and field events, soccer, he seemed to have a keen eye on rugby, a journey that saw him leverage on his talent and opportunities, hence his achievements as both a rugby player and coach. One of the articles, Mr. Speaker, that has been done describes him and summarizes his rugby talent as a mixture of brute strength, pace, and dexterity that has never been witnessed in the rugby field, with wonderful evasive skills for the back row and the build of a front row. Mr. Speaker, those who might know rugby will understand what I have explained. Indeed, all of us who have watched him on the pitch and interacted with him can relate to the statement. I remember when I first met him in 2002 after the Floodlights tournament, I told him that I will one day be the captain of the rugby team. And he laughed, but that began a very close friendship after that. Mr. Speaker, apart from the late Ayimba's notable traits that brought honor to this country through the rugby sport, the committee recognizes and lauds his tremendous achievements spanning 2 decades, and I'm honored, Mr. Speaker, that these achievements will forever remain in the record of this House and the record of this country. Just to highlight a few, Mr. Speaker, Benja played for Nondescripts in 2002, Cornish Pirates in England between 2003 and 2005, and the Kenya national team from 2006. He captained Impala, now known as Impala Saracens, to 2 championships, the Kenya Cup in 2000 and the Enterprise Cup in 2001. He represented Kenya at the 1998, 2002, and 2006 Commonwealth Games. He was part of the Kenya squad that featured in 2 Rugby World Cup 7 series in 2001 and 2005 Rugby World Cup 7s, tournaments in Argentina and in Hong Kong, respectively. He coached the Sevens team between 2006 and 2011, and subsequently in 2009 secured the first ever IRB World Series Main Cup finals in Adelaide, Australia. In the same year, Mr. Speaker, he led Shujaa to its maiden Rugby World Cup Sevens semi-final in Dubai. The second attempt at Kenya Sevens head coach between 2015 and 2017, he coached the team to its first ever appearance at the 2016 Olympics in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and strived to promote grassroots rugby, was part of the first ever successful Kitui Sevens in 2018. Mr. Speaker, the foregoing achievements are not a small feat. They are no small feat. The late Benja ventured in the rugby sports both as a player and a coach at a time when Kenya, like several other developing countries, continue to lag behind other established rugby nations like South Africa, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom. Needless to say, he was the only Rugby Sevens coach who was relieved of his duties in 2011 and reinstated in 2015. But despite these setbacks, he carried on and led the team to win the 2016 World Sevens title, Mr. Speaker, in Singapore, where the Kenyan team beat Fiji 37. And that was a very, very serious achievement that remains in the history books of this country. In that case, we salute the strength and persistence of this fallen hero. He was a pace-setter and a good example to other talented and upcoming rugby sportsmen. He was indeed a classic example of resilience following passion and talent against all odds. We also laud the late Ayimba and his associates on their aspiration to give back to the community. His vision to establish an age-grading rugby academy in Nyanza region aimed at tapping talent at the grassroots is one that must not only be appreciated, but, Mr. Speaker, that we must also support to its successful fruition. Amidst the achievements and many more, Mr. Speaker, some of which I may not be able to highlight at this time, the committee wishes to remember the late Benjamin Ayimba as one who indeed gave back to his country. An outstanding Kenyan whose efforts to grow personal talent, to mentor young people, and he really mentored everyone who he came across who was younger than him, on and off the pitch, and to give back to community, did well to show patriotism, one of the key pillars of good governance as espoused in Article 10.2 of the Constitution of Kenya. That, Mr. Speaker, sir, defines the late Ayimba's legacy and signature. In the writings of Aristotle, he wrote, "Man is at his best when he is doing his best at what he likes doing best." Indeed, the late Ayimba is one of those men whose achievements will remain engraved in the annals of history. He's among the few who applied this philosophy as a centerpiece of his life, with passion, firmness of purpose, and tenacity being his firm foundation, no matter the insurmountable journey. To those of us, Mr. Speaker, who interacted with him, he was a beacon of hope in sport mentorship. We will indeed have a reservoir of memories of his selflessness, an example that will live until the end of time. As a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, when the history of Kenyan rugby is written, the man, Benjamin Ayimba, will find a chapter and a place. Quite literally, he is gone, but his mark on rugby will endure the test of time. Mr. Speaker, therefore, having played his best, Benja is at peace. I'd like to thank, Mr. Speaker, all Kenyans who followed the appeal that we had made and contributed to his medical costs, Mr. Speaker, which had run out of insurance and everything. I want to particularly thank His Excellency, President Uhuru Kenyatta, who, Mr. Speaker, responded to my call for help and donated, Mr. Speaker, 1 million shillings. I also want to thank the Right Honorable former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, who also donated and went and visited the family, and all those other Kenyans who donated 50 shillings, 100 shillings. And even at this time, Mr. Speaker, I just make a final appeal that we still need to help the family. I want to thank Cabinet Secretary Amina, who we've been in touch with. She's really helped together with the Minister for Health and Kenyatta National Hospital to assist with some of those bills. Let us give this hero of Kenyan rugby and Kenyan sport a befitting send-off. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Senator Mwaruma.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa hii nafasi umenipa ili kupitisha salamu za faraja kwa familia na wana Nairobi kwa ujumla kwa kumpoteza mchezaji mashuhuri wa raga kwa jina Benjamin Ayimba. Kusema ule ukweli, Ayimba alifanya bidii akiwa mwanamchezo mashuhuri wa raga na alichangia pakubwa kuweka jina ya Kenya katika ile map ya dunia. Kusema ule ukweli, Bwana Ayimba alikuwa ni mkufunzi mzuri ambaye alikuwa na nidhamu na nguvu kama mchezaji ambaye nguvu zake ni za kuigwa. Nikiwa mwenyewe Mheshimiwa Spika ni mkufunzi wa mchezo wa kandanda, nafikiri ile kazi tunafanya kama wakufunzi wa michezo mbalimbali, tunafanya kazi kubwa sana kuhakikisha kwamba wanamichezo wanapata ujuzi wa kucheza. Lakini kando na ujuzi, Mheshimiwa Spika, peke yake kuna yale mengine yanayofunzwa pale uwanjani. Kwa mfano, nidhamu ya hali ya juu. Ayimba ukimwona katika uwanja alikuwa na nidhamu ya hali ya juu na aliweza kupitisha hiyo nidhamu kwa wachezaji wengine. Wakati alifanya bidii kuinua wengine katika kiwango kile chake, na wale wachezaji walipata kipato kizuri kupitia kwa huu mchezo wa raga. Kwa hivyo napenda kuungana na Wakenya wengine na wanamchezo wengine nikiwa kama mwenyekiti mdogo wa kamati ya bunge ya michezo na leba, ya kwamba tusaidiane na tushikane mkono na familia ya Benjamin Ayimba ili kuhakikisha kwamba huu mchezo wa raga umefika viwango vingine. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, si mchezo wa raga peke yake, lakini michezo mingine, kwa sababu tukiangalia Kenya inapata kipato cha juu kupitia kwa michezo kama raga na mbio, ambazo tunaangalia wenzetu wanaotoka bonde la Ufa wameleta kipato cha hali ya juu sana. Na nashukuru pia wale viongozi ambao tumesikia kwa mwenyekiti wa leba, kamati ya leba, kwamba walichangia pakubwa kulipia zile bills za Bwana Ayimba alipokuwa hospitalini. Kwa hivyo nafikiri si wengine sote ni tushikane mkono ili tusaidie familia na kuhakikisha kwamba Benjamin Ayimba ameenda vizuri, na tunaomba kwamba Mungu ailaze roho yake mahali pema pasawa. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika.
Senator Kajwang'.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I join Senator Sakaja, the entire nation that is mourning a great man, Benjamin Ayimba, who brought great glory to this country. Mr. Speaker, the definition of heroes of a nation tells you something about the soul of that nation. Unfortunately, Kenya is a country where our heroes tend to be politicians. Our heroes tend to be the Robin Hoods who acquire, then come and distribute the proceeds to the people they acquired from in the first place. How I wish that we had a value system where people like Benjamin Ayimba, who has brought global glory to this republic, would be elevated to the highest levels. Mr. Speaker, you'll agree with me that when a politician and Benjamin Ayimba are on a queue, the politician will be told to jump the queue, and not the Benjamin Ayimba, and not the Eliud Kipchoges of this world. We need to recalibrate the way we define and look at our heroes. At this point, there is not much we can do. We cannot bring Benjamin Ayimba back to life. But the glory, the adrenaline that inspired in our bodies, the smiles that he put on our faces, the excitement he caused us every time we saw the Kenyan rugby team, a player reaching for the try line, every time we saw a conversion, every time we saw a drop kick that was successfully executed, every time we saw the strength of the pack and the scrum of the Kenyan team. Mr. Speaker, those will live with us forever. I wish that the family can be taken care of, because as always is the case, we come for the funeral and make lofty speeches, even though many a times we only talk about the deceased 10% of the time and BBI 90% of the time at the funerals. I hope this is going to be different, that we are going to make promises and we are going to make commitments that we are going to live up to. Mr. Speaker, Benjamin Ayimba, what he did to the game of rugby, which was really a minority sport. Back then, it was a sport that was confined to a few schools. In Nairobi, it was Nairobi School and Lenana School. In Western, it was Maseno School and maybe St. Mary's Yala. And the generation of Benjamin Ayimba democratized the rugby movement to an extent that today the traditional schools that dominated rugby, Lenana and Nairobi School, are nowhere. Nowadays, it is the Kakamega boys, the Musingu, and rugby has moved to the western part of the country, and more people are now getting an opportunity to play rugby and also go international and play rugby in England and other countries the way Benjamin Ayimba did. We might not be able to pay him, we might not be able to idolize him appropriately as a hero in his days of living, but the memory he has left behind and the glory he has brought to Kenya, Mr. Speaker, is immense. And let us not wait also for some of our greats in cricket, because if there's another niche sport where Kenya is renowned internationally. If you travel and you meet a Pakistani or a Bangladeshi or an Indian and you start discussing cricket, they know Kenyans, they know Kenyan cricket players who even you as a Kenyan leader, perhaps you don't know. But because they have elevated the sport and they've brought up the name of the country to such lofty levels, and yet we still treat them just as watu wa kawaida. May Benjamin Ayimba's soul rest in peace. May his family find comfort. May the leadership make promises that they are willing to keep. May we have him a dignified burial. But what he has done to the game that is called rugby, which is basically a gentleman's game, is great, and his memory will live and will endure forever.
Senator Cheriot.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this chance. I join the rest of my colleagues on my own behalf and that of the people of Kericho to mourn this hero alongside everyone else of goodwill who is wishing his family God's grace during this extremely difficult time, as I mourn a gentleman who gave his life for this country and served it in the place and field of his calling to the best of his abilities, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Benjamin Ayimba contributed to the growth of rugby as a sport in this country, made many who ordinarily maybe may not have loved the sport of rugby, as this is not one of our traditional sports as a country, fell in love with it because of how he handled and motivated the young squad that he was lucky to have led, won the titles around the country, and that was a great moment of pride for us as a people, Mr. Speaker. Listening to his interviews every time they came back from the IRB series, be it on occasions that they won, as were listed by Senator Sakaja, and even on occasions where they didn't do so well, Mr. Speaker, he'd always have a good explanation as to what went wrong and always strived to make it better in their next appearance. Such are the gentlemen, Mr. Speaker, who make this country proud. As a nation, and I don't want to get into a moment of adage as a leader and start mourning and saying how we haven't done so much for our sports people, Mr. Speaker. I have taken the personal initiative knowing that this is something, sports in general, is an area that I'm extremely passionate about. And I have a bill, Mr. Speaker, that is in the formation stages, perhaps going through the publication scrutiny stage before finally being read for the first time before this House, that will look into the issues such as the one a few of my colleagues have spoken about, that we have men and women like Benjamin Ayimba who go out of this country, Mr. Speaker. They bring glory whose value you cannot even measure, Mr. Speaker. Because what is a value, either in kind or monetary consideration, of the young men and women who go around the world and fly our flag, that everybody gets to know about Kenya and reads about our history thanks to their exploits on the field, Mr. Speaker. We can never be able to compensate such people, but at least there's something that we can do to celebrate them, to honor, respect them, make sure that their names prominently feature, and that generations in future will know that there were such men and women who dedicated their lives into making this country a better place, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, the life of Benjamin Ayimba is one that we'll remember for a long time as a people. I know at this time his family is heartbroken. They've gone through a very rough patch in the last few months. It's not very simple for a family to come out and plead and say, call out for help, as they've had to because of his battle with illness. It goes on to speak to the challenges that we continue to experience as a people, Mr. Speaker, on the cost of medication in this country. And the fact that not even those that we thought are in a better place, like this gentleman, are able to afford it, Mr. Speaker, because it's simply out of the roof. And this is a situation and a scenario that is in so many of our families. Therefore, I join Senator Sakaja, who pleaded that if there are Kenyans of goodwill who still want to support this family, that we should make our contributions so that we can celebrate him. You know, others may be worried, Mr. Speaker, about his young family and the contribution. You know, much as I know that it's not easy to say this, Mr. Speaker, I know that in life, it all evens out at some point. for the good contribution that their father made to this country. It may not appear immediate, but for his good deeds, they cannot go without reaping his fruits in one way or the other. It may not be direct as it is right now, but I believe, Mr. Speaker, that one way or the other, in one way or the other, members of his family, especially the wife and the children, will reap the fruits of their father's endeavors and exploits for this republic. It calls upon us, because we are policy makers as members of parliament. And like I have said, Mr. Speaker, I have a bill that is before this House on the Sports Sports Act Amendment Bill of 2021, that when we get to that particular opportunity, many of these things that we say whenever we are faced with such scenarios, because this is not the first time that you're speaking as a House on the challenges that many of our athletes face, let us bring our thoughts together into ensuring that we unlock the potential that is in this industry. A potential where people can make a good living, first of all, during your playing days, and even later on, as a speaker, for example, when the good days, when we had just established the sports fund, before there was all the interference that came with it, and we diverted a lot of those funds into health, which is, yeah, I agree, an important segment of society that we need to take care of, but we shouldn't have diverted all the funds to the deprivation of sportsmen and women. Mr. Speaker, sports is a huge industry. Many of the countries that have been able to manage their sports well, when you talk about England, South Africa, and so many other places, they have employed millions of young people and people who are enthusiastic because of simply how they manage those industries well. I hope that as Parliament, in the few days that we still have, that in our lifetime, we shall be able to give a lifeline to this industry that continues to suffer. Take, for example, Mr. Speaker, even in this season of the pandemic, we know for a fact that many young men and women earn from sports. Yet, even after the resumption of near normal operation activities in various segments of our society, we are still awaiting for the Ministry of Sports to give their approval, the nod of approval on a resumption to all sporting activities. Yet, in the rest of the world, we saw the English Premier League coming to a conclusion, Mr. Speaker, where at least a good number of fans were able to be allowed into the stadium. We may not have the kind of resources that they have to be able to vaccinate all our people and send people back to stadium, but at least even for the players, so that we are able to give them, because when they play, they earn. And when they play, they generate revenue, which in return pays and meets their daily needs as a people, Mr. Speaker. We needed to have done this the same way we did it for all these other industries. And that is the kind of approach that we are saying we need a dimension shift. We need a conversation in this country that is bottom-up first, Mr. Speaker, that when you sit down and make a consideration trying to unlock, say, travel routes, because you have the big boys traveling from Nairobi to London, think also about the young people who need to play football at Kisumu Stadium, who need to play football here in Nairobi. Give a proposal as a ministry. And I challenge ministry officials, because I know there are some who are listening to this conversation, Mr. Speaker, that let them give us a return to sports route, so that clubs are able to follow this particular route in all the sports that you are involved in, and the many young people who draw their livelihood from sports are able to get back to work. As a people, we should continue to push this, Mr. Speaker, in memory of the good work that was done by legends and great people like Benjamin Ayimba. May his soul rest in eternal peace, and we continue to live on with the kind of attitude and demeanor that he had towards life, in doing his best despite the difficult circumstances that he found himself in. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Rose Nyamunga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to join my colleagues in eulogizing the late Benjamin Ayimba. I must say that I knew Benjamin many years back. I think it must be over 30 years ago. I knew him as a young person. And I did not know much about the rugby as a game. But from Benjamin, from the time I think he was in primary, upper primary to the secondary school, that is when he started being very active and developing interest in rugby. So I came to know about the game and enjoy and follow follow it through up to the point that Benjamin has ended it when he was the coach, first of all, as a team member, and lastly, as a coach. I must say that, Mr. Speaker, Benjamin was brought up by a single mother. And the mother was a good friend of mine. She is still a friend of mine to date. That's how I came to know the children. She's a very strong woman. And from her strength and being a single mother, she managed to raise her family in a God-fearing way and in a way that the children would be, in future, be in a position to take care of themselves. And I must say that this is a big blow to the family, because Benjamin, in his heart, he knew that the mother struggled with them as a single mother, and after that, when they were in a position now to be able to take care of the mother, Benjamin did a lot of work and did a lot of activities, even in the village. They used to live in Nairobi. Eventually, the mother had to relocate home, putting up a very beautiful home for the mother and making sure that she had enough activities to keep her busy as now an elderly person in the village. Mr. Speaker, I must say that apart from rugby, when Benjamin retired from rugby, or when he finished his, the term that he served as a coach, he did not stop there. He started something that I know that I got to know from young people and from my own son. He started a game, I think it's a sports game, that it is still in the formative stages, and it was going to be a big thing. I want to believe that the people who are working together with him will continue in that legacy to make sure that what Benjamin started, in fact, one day he told me, I've been struggling with this sport game for a very long time. It has been a long 7 years' work. So Benjamin was a very enterprising young person, very strong, very energetic, and I want to ask all of us that, unfortunately, he has lost his life at a very tender age. When somebody's in their 40s, really that is the prime of anybody's life. I want to ask the Kenya government and generally the Ministry of Sports that from time to time when we lose our heroes like Benjamin, we stand up here and put very great words on them and say everything that we knew and all the achievements, but then it ends there. I would like to urge all of us and to urge us as a nation that we must come out very, very clear on how we take care of our heroes, people who have made history, who have made Kenya shine at some level. So I want to condole with the family and ask that much as we are sending him to rest in the last resting place, Benjamin incurred a lot of debt. It has already been mentioned by several colleagues. He incurred a lot of hospital debt, which is still there. Benjamin has left a young family. Benjamin has left a mother who was looking up to him for more and more support as a mother who struggled to bring them up. And I must say there were 4 of them, and each and every one of them is in a position to take care of them. And it is because of Benjamin. He was a very focused young person, and he knew the burden the mother, and he helped the mother to carry that burden. So as we eulogize him and say good words about him, let us remember the family during this time in terms of the hospital bill, the young family that is left behind, and more so the burial that we give Benjamin, a befitting send-off to the final resting place. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I really condole with the family and feel very sorry, much as there's not much we can do. But we want to commit the family to God, and we know that God will grant them fortitude at this time. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Shiong.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this eulogizing message. Mr. Speaker, I want to start by saying that Benjamin Ayimba, as a sportsman, we have lost a great icon whom we shall never get. But, Mr. Speaker, on the other side, it's not really a great loss because Benjamin himself nurtured many to the level of achieving Kenya rugby game to a national and international levels. We shall remember Benjamin, not just because he was a player, but also a coach. Kenya has lost, we have lost, and the international players also have lost. May the Lord rest his peace in eternal peace till we meet again.
His spirit.
His spirit, sorry. May the Lord rest his spirit in eternal peace till we meet again. Bye-bye, Benjamin. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cherargei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. On my behalf, my family, and the great people of County of Nandi, I want to take this opportunity to pass our deepest condolences for the family of fallen hero, the rugby maestro, Benjamin Ayimba, for the unfortunate demise. I know when he was sick, I must congratulate and thank the people who stood with him. And even my proposal, even going to the funeral arrangements, I hope Senator Sakaja will put up a way on how we can assist the family, the young family, and also offset the funeral expenses and other medical that have been incurred. Mr. Speaker, I think Benjamin Ayimba is one who revolutionized rugby, because most of us, when we were in high school, it is through him that rugby became famous. Many young people, you are very cool because you are playing rugby. You are the yo-yo, that is a string slang because you are playing rugby. And I think, Mr. Speaker, it's among the people who are pioneers in the rugby arena that many people really many people in high school, many of my colleagues were very keen in playing rugby because how it was being packaged by Coach Ayimba and other individuals within the rugby arena. So, Mr. Speaker, Nandi County is is a source of champions, and almost 3/4 of young people, as someone has alluded, are in the sports arena, mostly through the athletes. They are the wall beaters, they are the track runners, including Eliud Kipchoge, Conseslus Kipruto, among others, who have made their mark. But unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Sports, also the government has not been very gracious enough to ensure that our athletes, our sportsmen and women, enjoy the fruits of their labor. Because, and I said before on the floor of the House, Mr. Speaker, why would you pay people to be brand Kenya ambassadors when you have already people like Eliud Kipchoge, Benjamin Ayimba and likes, when they wear just a jersey where Kenyan flag is enough branding that we need to see how, instead of giving so much money to brand Kenya, we can use our sportsmen and women to fly the flag when they wear those T-shirts, when they are competing on fields and the track. That opportunity can be used by the Ministry of Tourism and ensure those proceeds, in case of giving private advertising firms that are abroad, we should just give those money to sportsmen and women so that when they are running on a track, they can at least promote the diversity, the tourism, the unique culture we have as Kenyans, Mr. Speaker. Finally, Mr. Speaker, is on the issue of, we have seen there is something that is killing our sports industry slowly, and it is the issue of doping. And I hope my former chair in the Labor and Social Welfare, Senator Sakaja, will follow up on this issue that is eating it's becoming cancerous among the sports fraternity, especially on the issue of doping. But my worry, Mr. Speaker, is that there is a rule within the sports Kenya, and I hope it is illegal, and where we can put this to an end is somebody has served when they are being banned for 5 years or 3 years for using the substance, or 4 years. The sports Kenya or athletics Kenya do not allow that athletes to come back and compete on behalf of the country. But I thought that is subjecting that athlete to double jeopardy. So I hope the Committee of Labor and Social Welfare, led by Senator Sakaja, will look into that so that we don't subject our athletes or sportsmen and women into double jeopardy. If somebody has served the ban that have been given by IIF and also Athletics Kenya, they should be allowed again to compete so long as they have been cleared by the necessary agencies like ADAC, Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya, and many other agencies. But on this, of course, I hope the ministry or the national government will do something about to name, and I hope Senator Sakaja, since he is the city senator, he will be able to at least have one street or a place or a sports facility within Nairobi or even within Kenya. And I know he's a good friend of the president. He can whisper to president that we can have a sports facility, even a training, an academy of rugby that can be named after Benjamin Ayimba, so that his legacy can be outlived and many people can be inspired for the works that he did within the sports fraternity. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What is your point of information?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to inform, and I thank Senator Cherargei, but just to inform him that part of the plans that we're pushing for, there's a new rugby complex that is being done, Mr. Speaker, sports complex along Gong Road, that one of the facilities therein, even if not the entire, but one of the facilities must be named after Benjamin Ayimba, Mr. Speaker. And also, Mr. Speaker, it is a coincidence that on the same day we lost Benjamin, it was the 1-year anniversary of Alan Makaka, who was the fastest rugby player. Situma also in 2016 died in the same week. So we'll do something to really bring their memory. So thank you, Senator Cherargei, for that suggestion.
Senator Musurube.
Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to join you in condoling with the family of Benjamin Ayimba. It is indeed a very painful state that he has died at a very tender age. His family is just very young. And I want to say that the contributions he has made nationally and internationally should not just go like that, Honorable Speaker. And the death of Ayimba is just a reminder that we need to really look for mechanisms of ensuring that our sports persons do not just die in abject poverty. Honorable Speaker, our sports persons are people bring a lot of glory into this country. And since they also add to the economy and revenue of this country, there's need to just establish a mechanism of ensuring that their royalties that are even paid to them, even when their bodies are ailing, even when their bodies become weak, because most of the energetic time, youthful time, they have spent bringing glory to our country. And these royalties should spill over also to their families, Honorable Speaker. I know of quite a number of sports persons who have died in abject poverty. There is Wangila, who was a very good boxer. He just died like that. There is also Kadenge, who also died, some time ago. And there's also someone like Congestina, who has not died, but she's just languishing in abject poverty. Our sports persons should not actually go through this painful moment because they bring a lot of honor and glory to our country, and they also fly the flag of Kenya high. So there's need to really even have capacity training for sports persons when they're active and in their youthful years. They should be capacity training so that they can also be trained on how to utilize their monies so that they begin preparing for retirement just immediately they begin earning, Honorable Speaker. Because they are not supposed to die in a sorrow state. In the aging moment also, they're not also supposed to be, a pity, state. So, Honorable Speaker, we should see how to also nurture the talents of sports people and also ensure that we get the best we can from them. But even as they give us, their best, let us see how to have them age gracefully, and even when they exit the world, the world of the living, let us also ensure that their families are happy about their achievements, Honorable Speaker. I condole with this family and also on behalf of PWDs, and as a coordinator of PWD Sports, I pass my deepest condolences. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me the opportunity.
Finally, Senator Haji Mohammed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I offer my heartfelt condolences to the family and friends of the late Benjamin Ayimba. I pray for peace and comfort for the family and the loved ones at this difficult time, and I offer my condolences, and on behalf of the people of Garissa, I also offer our condolences to them all. His gentle soul will always be in our hearts. Benjamin Ayimba will definitely be remembered, and he goes down in history as the man who won the 2016 Singapore Sevens after thrashing Fiji 37 to bring the coveted cup home. This happened only a year after being reinstated as the coach, just a year before the tournament. It is no mean feat, and he was truly a Kenyan hero. Sports has a major symbolic value and shapes national self-perception. Sports, and I would like to assume all kinds of sports, can unite countries. Kenya's sportsmen and women, much like other national athletes, have become the nation's or national flag bearers. They have made this country visible on the global stage and inspired a generation of athletes and sportsmen and women. The good news is that I would like to assume that Kenyan policy towards sports have been improving in the recent years, but I still think that there's a lot of room to improve on. I think as the Senate, all leaders in this country, we need to push the government more towards improving the policies towards sports so that we can appreciate our sportsmen and women more and even reward them better. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, maybe before we go back to the other statements, let me ask the Chair devolution to lay his...
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the Senate today, the 25th of May, 2021. Report of the Standing Committee on Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations on the conferment of city status to Nakuru Municipality. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. Let's get now a statement from Senator Chirargi. Okay, give notice. Okay, sorry. Give notice. Let him give notice before. Relax, Senator Chirargi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to give notice of the following motion, that the Senate adopts the report of the Standing Committee on Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations on the conferment of city status to Nakuru Municipality, laid on the table of the Senate on Tuesday, 25th May 2021, and pursuant to Section 8(6) of the Urban Areas and Cities Act, approves the conferment of city status to Nakuru Municipality. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, Senator Chirargi.
Mr. Speaker, I needed your guidance. I have 3 statements. Will I be allowed to read them concurrently, and then if colleagues have interest, they can contribute on it?
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for that guidance. Mr. Speaker, request for statement on tendering and awarding process for the construction of Lamu Ijara Garissa Road, which is 257 kilometers, as part of LAPSET, the one Hindi Bondei Kiunga 113 kilometers, Ijara Saingilu Uluko 83 kilometers, which is total to 453 kilometers, that has been awarded by Kenya through 17.9 billion at the duration of 36 months. I rise pursuant to Standing Order 48-1 to 6 statement from the Standing Committee on Roads and Transportation on the tendering and awarding process for the construction of these roads that I've mentioned as part of the LAPSET corridor project. In the statement, the committee should, 1, clarify whether due procurement process was followed during the tendering and awarding of the tender for the construction of this Lamu Ijara Garissa, among the other 3 of total 457 kilometers, at a cost of 17.9 billion. Number 2, confirm the MS/China Communication Construction Company Limited as the capacity required to construct the road. Number 3, and finally, Mr. Speaker, state the plans that have been put in place by the government to compensate persons whose land, property was acquired in the process of planning and construction of this road under the LAPSET project. The second statement, Mr. Speaker, was the issue of Kenya Airways seeking refund for tickets worth 14 billion Kenya shillings. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 48-1 to 6 statement from the Standing Committee on Roads and Transportation regarding the seeking of Kenya shillings 14 billion by Kenya Airways to refund for unused tickets following the cancellation of flights occasioned by the advent of the COVID-19. In the statement, the committee should state 1, explain the reasons why Kenya Airways is seeking from Treasury a reimbursement of what? 14 billion refunded to its customers due to cancelled flights. Number 2, outline the measures of Kenya Airways have put in place during the COVID-19 period to ensure it remains solvent. Number 3, indicate the revenue projection of Kenya Airways before the COVID pandemic and after. And finally, Mr. Speaker, state the employment status of Kenya Airways staff, including that of senior management level, Mr. Speaker. And the final statement, Mr. Speaker, is I rise for statement on the issue of personal data protection by technology and communication companies in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 48.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Information, Communication and Technology regarding personal data protection by technology and communication companies in Kenya. In the statement, the committee should, 1, state the measures that have been put in place by technology and communication companies to ensure that the Kenya's right to privacy is protected. Number 2, indicate the measures the Communication Authority of Kenya, CA, has taken to protect consumers using social media sites and technology companies and sites such as Google, among others. Number 3, state the measures taken to ensure that the applications in Android phones and other smartphones are not infringing on users' personal data. Number 4, state the procedure for approval of applications to be sold or installed on customers' or consumers' mobile phones. Number 5, state the measures in place to ensure that personal data and information are not used by business agencies to send random SMSs or make unwelcome phone calls, which is rampant nowadays, Mr. Speaker, and coming in the backdrop that there is a process to filling the CEO of Communication Authority of Kenya. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity for the 3 statements. I thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I defer statements by Ngrungu Kangata at his request, and Senator Anwar is not here, is deferred. Senator Stewart Mazayo is not here. Senator Judith Pareno is not here. Let's get a statement from the Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare. Senator Sakaja, are you ready? Okay, seems the chair is not ready. Maybe we'll rearrange. Okay. Next, Standing Committee on Agriculture. Okay, that brings us to the end of the statement. Our next order. Next order.
Order number 8, motion, alteration of the Senate calendar for the 5th session.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move that notwithstanding the resolutions of the Senate made on the 16th February 2021, approval of the Senate calendar, 24th March 2021 and 30th March 2021, alteration of the Senate calendar, pursuant to Standing Orders 29.4 and 31.3c, the Senate resolves to further alter its calendar, regular sessions, for the 5th session 2021, in respect of Part 3, to hold sittings on Wednesday, 2nd and Thursday, 3rd June 2021, between 2:30 p.m. and 6:30 p.m., and that the Senate proceeds on recess from Friday, 4th June 2021, and resume its regular sittings on Tuesday, 6th July 2021, as set out in Part 4 of the Senate calendar, and as per Standing Order 31, approved on 16th February 2021, and that the Senate calendar, regular sessions for the 5th session, be altered accordingly. Mr. Speaker, I just need to say that this session has been very busy. Members have had a lot to do in spite of the COVID situation. Attendance has been very high in both the physical and the Zoom. Committees have been working, Speaker, and many times, Mr. Speaker, we've disrupted this session with special sittings, and so it's about time that members actually take a little break, Mr. Speaker, a little break, combined with our normal adjournment, our normal recess, plus if you can make a bit of compensation, Speaker, we will then leave, we will then come back, instead of just doing the Tuesdays, compensate for the Tuesday. Mr. Speaker, the reason we want to compensate because next Tuesday is a public holiday, it's a Madaraka Day, and so to make up for that and to try and clear some of the work left, Mr. Speaker, we put Wednesday and Thursday as meeting days, so that by the time we go on recess, we probably will have covered most of the most urgent activities and in the order paper. So I want to thank members for their patience. I know that members have been very, very busy. Some committees, Mr. Speaker, want to do work. Even during this time, it's going to be, some committees are traveling. So we would just wanted to make this alteration for the convenience of the House, and so that we can make up for some of the time that we lost during the many times of disruptions. So, Mr. Speaker, this is very straightforward for members to decide. I hope the members agree with me, and that we can actually take this and do it today, so that we can take a little break. I thank you, and I want to ask, I want to move and ask Senator Nyamunga to second. Thank you.
I second, Mr. Speaker.
I propose the question, which is that notwithstanding the resolutions of the Senate made on 16 February 2021, approval of the Senate calendar 24th March 2021 and 30th March 2021, alteration of the Senate calendar, pursuant to Standing Order number 29.4 and 31.3c, the Senate resolves to further alter the calendar, regular sessions for the 5th session 2021 in respect of Part 3, to hold sittings on Wednesday 2nd and Thursday 3rd June 2021 between 2:30 p.m. and 6:30 p.m., and that the Senate proceeds on recess from Friday 4th June 2021 and resume its regular sittings on Tuesday 6th July 2021 as set out in Part 4 of the Senate calendar and as per Standing Order 31 approved on 16th February 2021, and that the Senate calendar regular sessions for the 5th session be altered accordingly. Senator Makori Beatrice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to support this motion of alteration of the Senate calendar for the 5th session. Mr. Speaker, indeed we have had a long period of time during this session. A lot has been done with the senators. In even this difficult moment of COVID-19, we've had many sessions, both physically and hybrid. And since we've not finished all the business that we have, and on Tuesday next week we'll be celebrating the Madaraka Day, it is good we compensate with those 2 extra days so that we can finish the pending business. There's more motions, the bills, and the reports. And I think after that we can go on a recess. And during the recess, the members will continue having their committee sessions through hybrid. Some even may continue with the physical if need be. And that is the time even the senators will have a break and go to Mashinani and meet the constituents and have some time with them. But during that period, they can as well take measure of the COVID-19 rules so that we can educate the public on the importance of taking the regulation safely. Mr. Speaker, I support.
Senator Sakaja, did you want to? Okay. You know your card doesn't show your name.
Someone missed it. Mr. Speaker, as the host senator, I'm really disappointed. Someone has missed my card because it just says the card number. Yet everyone else, it gives their names. Mr. Speaker, I hope the clerks will sort that out. Mr. Speaker, I want to support this motion that alters the calendar of the Senate. Mr. Speaker, you will remember when we discussed this at the Senate Business Committee, I, in fact, was really pushing for more sittings. We take cognizance of the fact that the COVID-19 pandemic has made us slow down the number of sittings. We've been meeting once a week. But, Mr. Speaker, we have a lot of pending business as a Senate. Mr. Speaker, there are only 440 days left to the next election or to the end of the term of the Senate. Yet, as we speak today, we have 52 bills that have been published. We have 23 bills that are at second reading. I think 3 are at committee. Actually, 1 is at committee and 1 is due for first reading. Mr. Speaker, we have 52 petitions, and petitions have timelines that we need to respond to as a House, and it will be a huge disappointment if we don't finish the work of this Senate. I think we have a lot. So even for next week, in as much as Tuesday is a public holiday, Wednesday and Thursday, ideally, you know, if I could have been allowed to amend this, which I will not, we'd have met also in the morning and the afternoon. Mr. Speaker, this is a huge workload. Members have motions on various issues, some urgent, and we never get to them. You've just deferred almost, I think, 10 statements. And really here, this is where we're supposed to be. Mr. Speaker, you also recognize that following the court ruling, several bills which we had already dealt with as a Senate, had to start, the process again to be republished. Mr. Speaker, these bills went through rigorous process of legislation, public participation. Mr. Speaker, I can give you an example of the Pandemic Response Management Bill, which I had sponsored. We had more than 164 different individuals and institutions coming to give their views. Mr. Speaker, it's unfortunate that after we've gone through the entire process and even submitted it to the National Assembly, that we have to start again. Mr. Speaker, I have another 4. I have a prompt payment bill, which I have sponsored with Senator Faria, which again we have to start. I have the startup bill, which has been read for the first time today, and I'm grateful for that. The National Disaster Management Bill, and there's a County Government Public Service Board's bill that is yet to be published. Mr. Speaker, these bills went through rigorous public participation, and I just want to assure, because, and I'll give an example of the startup bill, we interacted with a lot of members of the startup community. They proposed a lot of amendments. They even wanted some alterations, and I'd just like to assure them that now the bill has been published with those amendments. incorporated. Same as the prompt payment bill, the amendments already passed, we've incorporated them in the new published bill, as well as disaster management, which are sponsored with Senator of Makueni, Mutula Kilonzo Jr. So that means, because we don't just do things for the sake of doing things technically, that some of those processes in the normal processing of the bill can be, be done faster, we can expedite. That we don't have to go through the deepest extent. In fact, when we call out for public participation, we should ask those stakeholders who had already come to us whether they have any new view or any opposing view, because we can't also deny them that chance to participate. But let us fast track it, Mr. Speaker. I would really, it would be a proud moment for the Senate if we can deal with these bills, at least 25 of them, within the next 3 months. I think it is possible. And when we come back from recess, Mr. Speaker, I would suggest that at that point, observing the COVID protocols, you can see we are some people are saying senators are not in the House. They should just know we are social distancing. Others are online. Yeah, all senators are keen in their duty. But observing these protocols, let us be able, Mr. Speaker, to sit twice every day, such that on Tuesday we have a morning session and afternoon, Wednesday morning and afternoon, Thursday morning and afternoon, so that in in a month, we'll have done the work of 2 or 3 months, Mr. Speaker. Then committee chairs should be creative. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the number of petitions that are pending, there are 52 petitions, and committees have bills. But committees should be flexible enough to meet, and it should allow us to meet sometimes during the session because of the mornings we'll have taken, to meet online, to meet in the evenings, Mr. Speaker, so that we can at least serve Kenyans and clear this backlog. I personally, as a chair, I feel very uncomfortable when I have pending work in my committee, Mr. Speaker. It feels bad. You feel disorganized. But I'm glad to note that of the 52 petitions, the Committee of Labor and Social Welfare has 0. Senator Kwamboka has helped me to clear all the pending petitions in my committee, together with all my members, and my vice chair is here. So at least that one you can tap yourselves on the back, that Labor Committee has no pending petition. In fact, we are following up the work that we did. So Hongera, vice chair, it's because of having an able vice chair that we're able to clear petitions, because he chairs meetings on my behalf when I'm not there, Mr. Speaker. So I beg to second, but I'd urge members, please let's support us to do more in a shorter period. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I put the question, this is a procedural motion. I now put the question, which is that notwithstanding the resolution of the Senate made on 16th February 2021, approval of the Senate calendar, 24th March 2021 and 30th March 2021, alteration of the Senate calendar, pursuant to Standing Orders number 29.4 and 31.3c, the Senate resolves to further alter its calendar, regular sessions for the 5th session 2021 in respect of Part 3, to hold sittings on Wednesday 2nd and Thursday 3rd June 2021 between 2:30 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. and that the Senate proceeds on recess from Friday 4th June 2021 and resume its regular sittings on Tuesday 6th July 2021 as set out in Part 4 of the Senate calendar and as part of Standing Order 31 approved on 16 February 2021, and that the Senate calendar regular sessions for the 5th session be altered accordingly. As men are of that opinion, say aye. Aye. As men are of a contrary view, say nay. The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 9, the Mental Health Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 28 of 2020, second reading, division.
That is deferred.
Next order.
Order number 10, the Wildlife Conservation and Management Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 30 of 2020. Second reading.
Mover, Senator Sylvia Kasanga. Number 10, or Senator Mwaruma.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to move an amendment on the Wildlife Management Act, number 47 of 2013. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg to move that the Wildlife Management Act Amendment Bill of 2020 to be read a second time. Madam Speaker, this amendment seeks to amend, or this amendment bill seeks to amend the Wildlife Management Act, or Act number 47 of 2013. And this act, when enacted, will be referred to as or cited as Wildlife Conservation and Management Act 2020. It's quite a brief act or bill, Madam Speaker, in that it seeks to amend few sections of the 2013 Act. I should say, Madam Speaker, that this amendment bill was a culmination of a debate here over a motion that I brought here, which members discussed, and we decided that instead of having that motion end there, then we put an amendment bill. Madam Speaker, where I come from a conservation area, Savo East and Savo West. And Madam Speaker, there are several challenges that result or come as a result of living within the conservation area. So if we amend this bill, Madam Speaker, then some of the issues that emanate from the challenges coming or that bedevil the people living around the conservation areas would be solved. The first amendment, Madam Speaker, that is Section 2 of this amendment bill, seeks to insert Section 21A, which previously was not in the Act number 47 of 2013. And the 21A will read, Madam Speaker, the Cabinet Secretary shall, as the case may be, and in each financial year, provide adequate funds for the management of the affairs of each community wildlife conservation committee. This section is important, Madam Speaker, because previously we did not have enough financing for the community wildlife conservation committees. And these committees, Madam Speaker, are tasked with making sure that the people who get damages in terms of life or animals or their domestic animals or crops are destroyed by wildlife, then are compensated. They do all the process from the time of identifying the people who have died, the animals that have been killed, to the point where their valuation is done and compensation list is made for compensation. So this section 21A1 seeks to ensure that the Cabinet Secretary adequately funds the community wildlife conservation committees. 21A2, Madam Speaker, reads the Cabinet Secretary shall, where no appeal has been lodged under this Act, ensure that compensation required to be paid under this Act is undertaken within 12 months over determination of the respective community wildlife conservation committees. As I have already indicated, Madam Speaker, this community wildlife conservation committee is important in that it determines the damages that have been incurred in terms of deaths of human beings, deaths of animals, and destruction of crops, Madam Speaker. But in the original Act, number 47 of 2013, it does not indicate the time or period that compensation is supposed to take place. For example, as we speak now, Madam Speaker, we have claims dating back from 2011, 2012, up to 2013 that have not been compensated, Madam Speaker, and now we are in the year 2021. But when we insert this clause or this deadline or timeline, Madam Speaker, then those who incur losses as a result of human-wildlife conflict, then they would be compensated within 12 months. And Madam Speaker, this is important because if we have damages emanating from the human-wildlife conflict, then if you're not paid within the 12 months, then you can seek judicial review from the courts to make sure that the Ministry of Tourism and Wildlife pays you. Madam Speaker, Section 3 of this amendment bill seeks to amend Section 23 of the Principal Act. If we look at Section 23, Madam Speaker, of the Principal Act, it talks about the Wildlife Endowment Fund, where 23.1 indicates that the service shall establish a Wildlife Endowment Fund and which shall be vested in the Board of Trustees. There shall be paid into the endowment fund monies appropriated by Parliament for purposes of the endowment fund. A proportion of such monies may be levied for the payment of environmental services by beneficiaries in productive services, and it goes on, Madam Speaker, up to E, where E states that the Board of Trustees shall facilitate community-based wildlife initiatives, and F, we have an insertion here, such other purposes as may be provided for by rules made under this Act. And we are seeking, or I'm seeking, Madam Speaker, to make an amendment by inserting FA to read, provide support to local communities negatively affected by activities undertaken with respect to wildlife conservation and management. Madam Speaker, initially, if you look at Section 23, it does not speak to offering support to the communities living within local communities that are negatively affected by the activities undertaken with respect to wildlife conservation and management. They are left on their own. Like Madam Speaker, just the other day, we had animals or ravaging elephants that went berserk and went to where communities were living, uprooting crops, killing animals, and some of the elephants even which were thirsty, broke even reservoir tanks. And when we called the KWS authorities, telling them to remove the animals, they said, no, these elephants have small babies, and if you remove them, then these babies will be eaten by wild dogs, they'll be eaten by lions, and so on. And so if you look at the whole of that scenario, it means that there is no way or there is no clause that speaks to offering support to the communities. Because if all the cassava has been uprooted and all the food has been eaten, then there has to be a mechanism, maybe through regulation, which will ensure that the communities whose food has been destroyed by wild animals can be given food and support so that they can exist until maybe the next harvest or planting season and harvest comes. Madam Speaker, I'm also seeking to amend Section 24 of the Principal Act by, if I'm to look first of all at 24A, which I'm seeking to amend, that is 1A. Madam Speaker, it talks about the wildlife compensation scheme, and it reads that the government shall establish a wildlife compensation scheme that shall consist of monies specifically allocated for this purpose through the budget process. If you look at this clause, Madam Speaker, it's vague, it's wide, and it's difficult to understand such a clause or implement such a clause. So, Madam Speaker, what I'm seeking to amend here in 24A, the section should read that monies annually allocated for the purpose by the National Assembly, because the National Assembly that appropriates money, it's different from just saying money appropriated for this purpose through budget process. Budget process is quite wide, and it can be rather ambiguous, Madam Speaker. Section 5, Madam Speaker, seeks to amend Section 25 of the Principal Act. And if I look at the initial, or the section, number 47 of 2013, Section 25 of the 2013 Act talks about compensation for personal injury or death or damage to property. And one says that where any person suffers any bodily injury or is killed by any wildlife listed under the 3rd schedule, the person injured, or in the case of a deceased person, the personal representative or successor or assignee may launch a claim to the County Wildlife Conservation and Compensation Committee within the jurisdiction established under this Act. It continues to say that the County Wildlife Conservation and Compensation Committee established under Section 18 shall verify a claim made under Section 1, and upon verification, submit the claim to the Cabinet Secretary together with recommendations. Now, the section, Madam Speaker, that I seek to amend is subsection 4, which reads, any person who suffers loss or damage to crops, livestock, or other property from wildlife specified in the 7th schedule hereof, and subject to the rules made by the Cabinet Secretary, may submit a claim to the County Wildlife Conservation and Compensation Committee, who shall verify the claim and make recommendations as appropriate and submit it to the service for due consideration. Madam Speaker, I find this a bit difficult and to implement. Submit a claim to the County Wildlife Compensation Committee, who shall verify the claim and make recommendations as appropriate to the service. So what the service is supposed to do, consider whether to compensate or not. Madam Speaker, that to me is rather problematic, and what I'm seeking to amend in that section, it should read, delete the words due consideration by the service. Or for the purpose of processing the payment for compensation. Madam Speaker, why do we establish wildlife compensation committees if again there would be another arm that would go and do consideration for compensation? So according to me, once the County Wildlife Conservation and Compensation Committees make recommendations and they have done the evaluations and they've done all that work, then whatever report is submitted to the Ministry of Tourism and Kenya Wildlife Service, then it should be for processing payment, Madam Speaker, not due consideration. This word due consideration is problematic, and I think that is why we are having claims running back up to 2012 have not been paid up to now. Yet they are deserving cases, people are suffering, people have lost livelihoods, and nobody is caring to compensate them because of such ambiguous, Madam Speaker, clauses. In the same section 5, subsection C in the amendment bill, it should read, by inserting the words within 12 months, immediately after the words award and pay in the introductory clause. Again, Madam Speaker, I'm insisting on putting timelines in this bill because then it removes the ambiguity, and we cannot wait, Madam Speaker, for a compensation infinitesimally. Once you make your claim, you need to know after how long you can be paid. Otherwise, if we don't put such clauses, then again, Madam Speaker, we cannot go to courts to compel the government to compensate these hardworking citizens who have been impoverished by lack of taking responsibility by the governments of the day to make sure that our people earn from their hard work. Madam Speaker, the same Section 5, Part D, 6 to delete the word either appearing immediately after the words of compensation by. Of compensation by and immediately after the words and compensation committee. I think that would be rather straightforward. Section 6 of this amendment bill, Madam Speaker, seeks to amend Section 76 of the Principal Act. Section 76, Madam Speaker, talks about the guidelines and on incentives and benefit sharing. Madam Speaker, this is a very important section in that it speaks to how the communities living within the conservation areas are supposed to benefit. And Madam Speaker, Section 76 talks about 5% that should go to the communities that live around the conservation areas. Madam Speaker, the communities living around the conservation areas are supposed to get 5% of what is collected or whatever is collected, but unfortunately up to now they are not getting anything. And when you ask the Minister of Tourism, they tell you that we are not collecting enough even to run the conservation areas. Now, if you're not collecting enough to run the conservation areas, what do? They say that we borrow some money from partners across the world who are keen on conservation. And so my question is, why don't you borrow even money to give the 5% to the communities around the conservation areas so that you can live as per this law, the Wildlife Conservation Act of 2013. So, Madam Speaker, how it will look like after the amendment, Madam Speaker, Section 6 should read: the Cabinet Secretary shall, in formulating the guidelines, ensure that the guidelines comply with the condition that a minimum of 5% of the benefits from national parks and national reserves shall be allocated to local communities neighboring or negatively affected by activities undertaken for the preservation of the national park. And Part B should read: by inserting the following, new subsection immediately after Section 4. So we have 4A, these are new clause: the determination of the minimum percentage of the benefit to be allocated to the local communities under subsection 4 shall be based on the gross total revenue and fees collected with respect to the protected area. So what was lacking also was we want the gross total revenue and fees. And Madam Speaker, in the past, in 2018, I tried to ask a question to the Minister of Tourism to tell us how much they get from Savo East and Savo West, and the Cabinet Secretary brought some rather funny answer. He said that they collect 50 million from Savo East and Savo West as land rates, paid as land rates. And the question that I asked is that what about the payee for the employees who are employed to work in the hotels? What about the payee for the people who are working as game rangers, warders, game scouts, and so on? All that money should come into the gross total revenue, or to add up with the gross total revenue and fees collected within the protected area. What about the gate fees? So the Cabinet Secretary could not give us that data then, but now we are saying we need to get all that data and determine the 5% of the gross revenue and fees, so that we can determine how much 5% should go to the communities living around the protected area. And Madam Speaker, we are saying if we use 10 billion, we are supposed to use 10 billion to run the conservation areas, and we don't raise 10 billion from the collections, and we raise only 8 billion. We borrowed 2 billion from the partners, then the conservation partners across the world. And the communities are supposed to get like 500 million. Why don't we borrow 2.5 billion so that this act can be we make sure that we fulfill all these clauses and the requirements of this bill. The seventh subsection that I seek to amend is the seventh schedule or the third schedule in the Principal Act, number 47 of 2013. And if you look at Schedule 7, it is Schedule 3 actually, sorry. Schedule 3, it talks about wildlife species in respect of which compensation must be paid. And they are listed elephant, lion, leopard, rhino, hyena, etc., etc. And we also have poisonous snakes. And what happened, Madam Speaker, in the Omnibus Bill, Amendment Bill to the Wildlife Management Act of 2013. In 2019, by National Assembly, they removed some of these animals, like they removed the snakes, they removed shark, they removed stonefish, they removed the whale, stingray, wild pig, and buffalo. And when we sought, because this bill, Madam Speaker, has gone through public participation before we started the whole process, and you know the reasons why we started this whole process again. During public participation, Madam Speaker, I asked the Cabinet Secretary why they removed the snake and so on, and they said it's because of this bill requires that we have insurance. Now, when they were calculating, when they gave an expert to calculate the insurance premiums, when we have the snakes, the snake in this third schedule, they said they were being asked for more than 13 billion in premiums. But when you remove the snake, then the premiums are coming down to about less than 4 billion, and that's why they removed the snake. But I really asked them, really 48%, that is data, of deaths within the conservation areas is because of the snake bite. So why do we remove? And I think we were in agreement that time with the Cabinet Secretary that we need to return the snake. So, Madam Speaker, this clause 7 should read or seeks to put back the following animals in the third schedule. So the third schedule to the Principal Act is amended in Part A by inserting the words poisonous snake, dangerous snake, and we put both of them, poisonous snake and dangerous snake, ostensibly because you can have some snakes that are dangerous but are not poisonous. We have some snakes that are poisonous but necessarily are not dangerous. So to ensure that we don't leave any snake behind, we put poisonous snakes, dangerous snakes.
Senator, what are the examples of the dangerous snakes and the poisonous one? Because
there are some snakes that are dangerous, like the python, but necessarily it is not poisonous. It just needs a tree, and it wriggles you around the tree, breaks your vertebrae column, and you're dead. But like the puff adder is both dangerous and poisonous. So we sought to put these two so that that description encompasses all the snakes on earth, Madam Speaker. Yes? The shark, stonefish, whale, stingray, and wild pig. Immediately after the word buffalo, Madam Speaker, and you can see they're there in the third schedule. So, Madam Speaker, this is quite a straightforward a bill. So, my chair, do you have, you have a wild park here, wild game reserve, national park. I would request my chair and my in-law, the senator for Nairobi, to second this bill. And Madam Speaker, because I don't want us to end debate here, then maybe after seconding, we need to have more time because there are people who are keen on this bill because wildlife is domiciled across the whole country. So we want to get more time for people for members to contribute. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Sakaja, Senator for Nairobi.
Madam Speaker, you've heard the mover of this bill, Senator Maruma, asking if I have animals. Yeah, before seconding. Madam Speaker, Nairobi National Park is indeed teeming with a lot of animals. And as he has mentioned, being my Mlamu, he knows that in his county I'm well represented as well by his constituents. Madam Speaker, the area of animal, or rather wildlife and human-wildlife conflict is really, an area that needs to be given some more focus as a country. Madam Speaker, we've gone to many parts of this country in various committees. When I was chairing the Committee on National Security and Defense, at the time when Senator Haji was unwell, or rather he was engaged in different processes outside this House. Madam Speaker, we visited Taita Taveta County, and some of the issues that came out following a petition were related to human-wildlife conflict. Madam Speaker, we've gone to various other counties, Samburu County, Isiolo County, even Tana River County, where a lot of the members of the public, because of the nature of this conflict and what they feel has been, the focus by government more on the animals than on them, they have a very negative view in many respects towards conservation. Madam Speaker, we've met families that have lost their livelihoods, that have lost loved ones, but have not been able to be compensated. This is a matter that is very close to Senator Mwarume's heart, and that is why I congratulate him for moving his motion into a bill. And Madam Speaker, I'd like to encourage colleagues to transform their motions into statute, into bills, into legislative proposals, because many times if you look at the wording of our motions, most motions urge the government to consider. And the government can feel the urge or ignore the urge. They might consider or not consider. But once we make law, then the government has no choice but to follow the law. So many motions are nice to debate. We'll have spoken about an issue, but the implementation of those motions are constrained, and many times government functionaries will say that there is no enabling legislative instrument, there is no legal framework to implement that which you've brought in through motions. So I'd like to really congratulate Senator Mwaruma for transforming the motion which I think he brought early on in this term on wildlife conservation and management into this bill, which also, as I had explained earlier on the other bills, has had to come back to the Senate. Madam Speaker, we've had cases of this conflict that require compensation in Nairobi. Many of the places that border the park, and because of encroachment, people have been attacked, and not much has been able to be done. Madam Speaker, in another life, my father was a wheat farmer in Narok, and we went through this as a family, but a lot of money was lost when elephants ate his wheat. and we bore the consequences for years, and he's never been compensated. But I want to speak at this, we're not legislating for ourselves, but really to make sure, because once the communities around these wildlife conservation areas, these parks, this national, the game reserves, etc., once those communities own conservation, because we have mitigated the negative effects of lack of compensation, once they own this compensation, Madam Speaker, will transform a lot of these conservation areas. That the people themselves can feel that the animals are not the enemies. When they see KWS, rangers and wardens, they feel like these KWS rangers value animal life or wildlife more than human life. But once we change that dynamic, then we have the people, the citizens, the human beings, as the biggest champions for conservation. Madam Speaker, this country is regarded highly around the world because of our animals, because of the wildlife. And if we're able then to leverage on this and have the people part and parcel of conservation and management, then indeed we'll be able to do much better in that area. So one of the areas that really will make them champions of conservation and wildlife management is addressing the matters of compensation, giving timelines, saying that this must be done by this time, classifying the animals. Madam Speaker, the provision that has been put in Clause 2, talking about the CS providing funding, I want to say, Senator Maruma, that is a very smart way of putting it without our neighbors down the corridor saying that you're doing a money bill, that then they can be able to find resources within their budgets for management of these affairs of each community wildlife conservation committee. And again, creating a committee of the people around there then gives them ownership. That it is not being done by people from Nairobi, by KWS, but also the people themselves around there, then they own this process. Madam Speaker, many communities have not seen the value even of tourism. They don't see the value. Apart from those who might engage in trading curios, many of them see it as more of a liability. But Madam Speaker, when we say that in Section 23, that then we'll be able to provide support to local communities that are negatively affected by activities undertaken with respect to wildlife conservation and management, then we are moving towards having them be part and parcel of this area of wildlife management. Madam Speaker, this Act provides a timeline of 12 months for the compensation of human death, human injury, or crop and property damage caused by wildlife in accordance with the Act. Of course, there is no way you can ever fully compensate human death. You can never bring somebody back to life. But in many times, Madam Speaker, these are loved ones, some are breadwinners, and there is need indeed for some form of compensation. If you go to areas of Meru, where you find the elephants have, they wreak havoc, and the people now want to go and attack the elephants and slaughter the elephants, Madam Speaker, or in areas in Narok where they go through the same thing, then adequate provision of compensation will prevent people from trying to go back now to kill the animals. Madam Speaker, we have dwindling numbers. We have less than, I think, 2,000 lions. We have these animals, which are great heritage. And as we always say, this heritage is not a gift that we have to bequeath our children, but it's something that we're taking from them, and we're keeping it on their behalf. It's not something we've inherited, rather, from our ancestors. It is something that we have to bequeath to those who are behind us. But I speak also importantly, the area of, creating provisions for county governments to provide resources is extremely important. In this area of conservation, county governments have an important role to play because all of these parks, reserves are in counties, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, and I think county governments need to take a bigger role. We need to regularize how different counties are benefiting differently, Madam Speaker. If the people in Narok County are benefiting from the park, I think the people in Taita Taveta County need also directly to benefit and have this resource sharing from the animals in the parks and game reserves that that are there, Madam Speaker. It is extremely important, and this bill therefore gives that clarity, and it affects the functions and powers of county governments in terms of Article 110A of the Constitution of Kenya. Madam Speaker, it was interesting to hear the description by Senator Maruma of poisonous snakes and dangerous snakes. He's told us which are dangerous but not poisonous, but I think all those which are poisonous are dangerous as well, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in addition, if you look at the provisions in Section 76, I like the new section that is being proposed, Madam Speaker, that the Cabinet Secretary shall, in formulating guidelines, ensure that these guidelines comply with the condition that a minimum of 5% of the benefits from national parks and national reserves shall be allocated to local communities neighboring or negatively affected by activities undertaken for the preservation. We, even us in Nairobi, want that 5% from the Nairobi National Park. Madam Speaker, and as I've said, we should not have different application. There are those of us who understand that in terms of the Constitution, there's a difference between the national parks and reserves, but the common mwananchi does not see that difference. And the common mwananchi then feels that some parts of this country are being unfairly treated if they're not able to benefit from what they have, whereas other counties are able to benefit from what they have. Madam Speaker, the determination of the minimum percentage of the benefits to be allocated to local communities shall be based on the gross total revenue and the fees collected with respect to the protected area. I have heard Senator Maruma trying to stretch that, but it makes sense because that is what, what is accruing from that area is not just the park fees. It is not just, that kind of revenue, but the national government gets revenue from different taxes that are levied from the activities that are going on in that area, within that area. So if it's within a geographically compact area, then a good administration should be able to do a fair calculation of what then goes to the communities around those areas, Madam Speaker. And then finally, in the third schedule, we have seen the provisions of the definition of which animals, in respect of which compensation must be paid. I don't know what the rationale was in listing, because if it's animals, it's animals. Because you might limit, you have elephants, lion, leopards, rhino, hyena, crocodile, cheetah, buffalo, poisonous snakes, hippo, shark, stonefish, whale, stingray, wild dog, wild pig. But you might get injury from another animal within that area, Senator Maruma. For instance, you have not put wildebeest, but during the migration of wildebeest, and they come in millions, in huge hordes, they cause damage in some areas, Madam Speaker, across the, within the Mara. They could cause potentially damage to crops, they could cause damage to human life, you can be trampled upon. Does that mean then that you will not get compensation? So I think this is a bit limiting, and possibly it would have been prudent to expand this, of course, bearing in mind the issue of the cost of insurance and compensation. I've seen wildebeest only on crop, livestock, and property damage, and not human life, but you never know, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I pray that as we've spoken, that this bill also will be fast-tracked. But before I sit, I want to really talk about the issue of incentives. We must incentivize these local communities. Madam Speaker, if you incentivize them, and I'm glad that there's a proposal in Section 76, where the CRA, Commission of Revenue Allocation, together with the Cabinet Secretary, then can formulate guidelines. And I hope Senator Maruma will be involved in that process, because he's been the champion of this issue regarding incentives and benefit sharing, and the nature and manner in which the same shall be distributed. And there's no need to reinvent the wheel. If you look at other countries that have similar reserves and parks, there are very clear incentives. If you look at what happens in South Africa, if you look at what happens in Botswana, in such countries, the community are part and parcel of it, because they're really being incentivized and they see the value of that. In fact, some of the proceeds of this have gone to social work, like building schools and hospitals and facilities where the people around there feel that indeed they are beneficiaries of those animals that are there, and the animals are not a hindrance to their development, but they are actually part of their development. Madam Speaker, within 21 days, The rules and regulations shall be formulated to govern the regime on incentives, and I hope that this is followed to the letter. We've done many bills where the implementation period has not been strict, so it's good that we've specified certain things must be done within 21 days, and that there shall be public participation, or what Senator Maruma has called public scrutiny, at every stage of the formulation within the framework of the laws on devolution and land management. Madam Speaker, private investments, subject to Article 66 of the Constitution, in conservancies shall benefit local communities, and investors shall provide such benefits by providing infrastructure, various options, including infrastructure, education, social amenities. You can have, scholarships. You can get those young people within those areas being sponsored to learn more about conservation, about running conservancies. And Madam Speaker, even as we do this, because I've seen recently, even a published gazette that talked about, moving more to privatizing these national resources and these conservancies. Madam Speaker, I think that's a matter that must come to a committee on delegated legislation, because, Madam Speaker, we want this natural heritage, these animals, these conservancies to stay in the hands of the people to the greatest extent. There can be partnerships, yes, but not to take away. Where you find somebody owning a conservancy of 100,000 acres and limiting even the people from around the community from coming in there. We have had cases of people who have been attacked and shot before. I think there must be a way, because I believe in, and they're doing a great job, Madam Speaker. If you go to Borana Conservancy, if you go to Lewa, if you go to Oljogi, if you go to many of these areas, they're very beautiful resorts, and the animals are being taken care of very well, Madam Speaker. I'll invite Senator Maruma to come with me soon, because I like going there when I can. Because, Madam Speaker, you really then feel what this country is about. This country is the land, and it's the territory and the people. But, Madam Speaker, apart from those conservancies that are run well, others, Madam Speaker, are run in a way to, that even the locals feel that this is not for Kenyans, that this is for those from abroad. Some of them have had cases of racism, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we all know too well the case of somebody who was shot at one of these ranches, a few years ago, and it led to a huge case that was followed, and we know what happened after that. So we need to really look into this. We can't have a few people benefiting from what God has given freely to the people of Kenya. So, Madam Speaker, with those very many remarks, I'd like to support this bill, and yet again, really congratulate and thank the Senator of Taita Taveta, my in-law, for doing this, for bringing us this legislation. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honourable Senators, I now propose the question. Pardon? I propose the question, which is that the Wildlife Conservation and Management Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 30 of 2020, be now read a second time. Senator Guru.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to, from onset, support this amendment to the Wildlife Conservation and Management Act, which is the Wildlife Conservation Management Amendment Bill 2020. Madam Speaker, wildlife is an important asset to this country and to the world at large, and it's responsibility of every responsible government to protect its wildlife and conserve the habitats for the wildlife. And based on that, I come from a county which has many such facilities. It has national parks, like the Marsabit National Park, Sibiloi National Park, the three island national parks in Lake Turkana, the southern, the central, and the northern islands, which are all within Marsabit County. And also we have national reserves, like Marsabit National Reserve and Sibiloi Losai National Reserve, which are all still part of community areas which have been set aside for the purpose of conservation of wildlife. Madam Speaker, the main issue here, and I think because I've been in the Lands Committee with Senator Maruma when he has been bringing all these petitions I've been discussing with the Cabinet Secretary, is first, we had a serious petition from the county wildlife management and conservation and the conservation committees because of their terms, the way they have been remunerated, and we discussed that at length, but it all boiled down to the issue of financial resources. When you expect these committees to perform the functions of being the ones under Section 18 of these, which are formed under Section 18 and under Section 25, they are the ones who are supposed to evaluate claims, then they need to be facilitated. So that is, the whole issue boils down to funding, but it's very important that when you set up structures, we have to facilitate them properly. The other aspect is the issue of compensation. I like the way the amendments are, because the amendments are, first of all, if you look at 21, is about the funding or resourcing of the service itself, where it's very specific, where it's stated that the Cabinet Secretary shall, as the case may be in each financial year, provide adequate funding. This is where the problem is, adequate funding, because we always hear funds are not enough, but it's good to prioritize what is in that sector, what is important in that sector, for the management of the affairs of each community wildlife conservation committee. These committees have been the ones who have been having problems. They brought a petition to Senate because of that aspect of not being funded properly, their own remuneration and also their own activities. Then the other aspect is compensation. Compensation, the last time when we followed up with the CS, are running into billions, which have been approved by these community wildlife conservation committees. They have approved, somebody has been injured or has been killed, and his kins have brought the claim. It has been processed, it has been confirmed, then it comes and now gets stuck here at the headquarters at the CS, and by CS concerned. And when we ask, we are told there is no funding. So this amendment requires that the CS, when he is budgeting or he or she is budgeting, should budget adequately for this compensation, knowing that Kenyans are living with these animals, and there's always that negative impact of the wildlife on the Kenyans, their own lives, their livelihoods in terms of livestock and even the farm produce. So the CS has to budget properly and adequately for it. So here, I think the mover is trying to be the sponsor is trying to be very clear that there must be adequate budgeting for it. Then after budgeting, or even having the adequate fund, the issue it takes, there is no time limit. There's no time limit in making sure that the compensation is done on time. But this amendment cures that by giving the CS a maximum of 12 months. Within 12 months after receiving that complaint, the CS should make sure that the affected persons are compensated. So we are giving time limits. The other aspect is the animals themselves. I'm surprised at the explanation which Senator Maruma gave, that some animals were removed from the list of animals which compensation is due for if you are injured by them, or death occurs because of maybe bites, snake bites or something like that. That the CS gave an explanation that they removed those animals because they were raising the premium for insurance. That is very unfortunate, because we are not considering, in that case, we are not considering the citizens of these countries who are being affected by these animals, who are coexisting with these animals. I'll give an example of Losai National Reserve, which is in the southern parts of Marsabit County. One of the main animals they describe is the pafada. And it's found in plenty there. You always get cases of herdsmen being injured, some even being killed by these dangerous snakes. Because they're all over the place and you're just herding your animals, they'll ambush you. I personally know several cases. Now, if you remove that kind of an animal from the list of compensation, so what are you saying? Removing any animal from the list of compensation is actually endangering the existence of that animal, because now the public will target those animals, because even if it kills or it injures somebody, it will not be compensated, so it's better to deal with them so that they are not there to raise any issue of compensation. So it goes counter to conservation, to management, and also to the security of these animals. So it's good that Senator Mwaruma has brought in an amendment on the third schedule, which brings back the list of all those animals, because all the wild animals at any one time or another will have negative impact on the humans because of the conflict which will occur. And in that case, then, we don't need to disadvantage the residents, the citizens who have given their land, who have decided to coexist with these animals. In any event of that unfortunate occurrence, then that person needs to be compensated so that they also feel that. The other aspect is the communities living around the national parks, who most of the time you'll find they are farmers or they are pastoralists, they have livestock, and animals like elephant will always get out and destroy crops. Animals like lion, cheetah, leopards, you'll find they'll be interested in the livestock, which is an easier animal to catch than the other wildlife. So there will always be that negative impact. Other than the direct compensation of the person affected, there is need also to have that benefit from the national park, from the conservancy, to the host communities, the neighboring communities, so that they feel that this resource is of direct benefit to them through having some corporate social responsibilities in terms of the, like now he has said that for every facility, 5% of what they collect need to go to the community. But that will also require them to actually improve and attract revenue to themselves, because on their own they don't generate revenue until maybe you get tourists and all that. So they must also market themselves. They must also not just work like the mainstream public service, where public officers are just there to get their salary at the end of the month. They don't get themselves on their outputs. These services, like the Kenya Wildlife Service, need to be oriented in such a way that wherever they are, much as they are conserving, they are protecting, they also have to publicize the kind of facilities they have. Like in case of Marsabit National Park is one of the most well-conserved parks. You'll find if you fly over it, you'll have natural forest in its pristine form, wildlife still there, but tourism is not very much vibrant there. Rarely do you find tourists in those areas. So there is need to develop tourist facilities within the park. There is need to publicize so that we can generate that that resource, that we can generate the revenue so that the communities around the park can get a share of it. Sometimes when there is no much activity and you are just conserving and the community is not benefiting, then you will get conflicts. Like in Sibiloi National Park, there is a lot of conflict between the rangers and the neighboring communities, who at times will have to, during the dry season, graze, or would like to graze in the park because that's the only place where there is grass. So there must be a way of managing even that. When the neighboring communities feel like for the survival of the animals because of drought, the only place they can access is the park, then there must be a way of controlled grazing also in those parks. And that way, the community will feel the benefit of conserving that area, because when things will be so hard, there will be a fallback area with some management. That way, then we can benefit. So, Madam Speaker, I support this amendment, and I hope that because of the outstanding claims which run into billions, this amendment goes through, and we need to engage the CS so that those backlogs are cleared, because the lives and livelihoods of Kenyans are important as any other priority given to the sector when budgeting is done. Because if the budgeting is done sectorally, this is an important aspect of this sector. It cannot be that there are no funds to compensate those who have been killed with livestock, those who have been injured, those whose properties have been destroyed. It must be a priority for that sector, because those are the people who have given out their lands to be converted into those national parks, into those conservancies, and they cannot be told that they are not important, that whenever they have claims, I know people who have claims running into 10 years or so. I know of a case some time back of a young boy who was killed by a leopard in my county, and up to now they have not been compensated. And the only reason we are told is we have taken it all the way to the CS and there is no funds to compensate. So this bill tries to cure that by giving the CS the responsibility to make sure that adequate budgeting is done, and when the claims come, is given a time frame of within 12 months to pay, and that way then we'll have Kenyans appreciating the heritage we have. We have to conserve it, but we also have to be, the mitigation also has to be there when there is that conflict. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Mwarumo.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that pursuant to Standing Order 1051, the debate be now adjourned, and request Senator Engineer Algura to second.
Senator Algura. Honorable Senators, I now put the question that pursuant to Standing Order 1051, the debate be now adjourned. As many as are of the opinion say aye. Aye. And those of the contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it. Honorable Senators, there being no other business, it is now time to adjourn the House. The House therefore stands adjourned until Wednesday, 2nd June 2021 at 2:30 p.m.